the chef must put on his gear here because you have signed up for a culinary expedition. And maybe I'll wash this the next time I wear it. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Mike Richman, and I am, I'm supposed to be carrying this. My name is Mike Richman. I'm very, very happy to be here with you this morning. I'm with a company called CA Technologies, and I'm a lead architect in the area of project and portfolio management, and I'm thoroughly honored to be here, and we're going to have fun this morning. As much fun as we can make this topic, okay? That's my goal. But one thing before we even get into the title slide of this, I was looking at these laws, and we know everyone knows about Murphy's Law, and everyone knows about O'Malley's Law, and then there's Saw's Law. But then I got to the coleslaw, and I thought that was really cute, right? Coleslaw, the coleslaw of project management is finely chopped cabbage and mayonnaise. And I thought that went very well with the theme of our presentation today, which is on the topic of PESTAR. And when you read, if you read the intro to our talk today, the PESTAR is like pesto. It can be good for your soul. So I just wanted to share with you and ask, isn't it nourishing to yourself when you do a good job? Today, what I'd like to do is feed your soul with some more ideas on how to do a more effective job of project scheduling. This is going to be a very specific talk on IT project scheduling. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, some special ingredients that you can throw into your culinary delights. And I'm also going to provide you with an approach, a mentoring approach for how to improve your skill set and those around you in this area of project scheduling. Because we know project management is a huge topic. I've been at it for more than 15 years in my capacity, and I've implemented project management skills through many different companies, many different types of companies, and I thought that we might take a very narrow, specific approach on improving project scheduling capabilities. So you will, by the end, understand what P.E.S.T.A.R. means. So today we are going to learn more about what the agenda is. What's the acronym? What does it mean? How does PESTAR relate to CA-PMM and to PMBOK? We'll give you a perspective there. I will talk with you about the 6-week mentoring approach that you can use with your teams. We'll get into the details, and that's where we'll get into some tips and tricks about each of those letters and what you can think about and how you can improve. And then after you get through this PESTAR mentoring that you're going to do with your team, what's life like afterwards? And then some conclusions. So let's start with the fundamentals here. Let's take a look at the big picture. We know that organizations who effectively manage their project schedules and have effective processes result in having better reporting and better success. So the good news is we know that the state of California is certainly past this first step. And my news is that I'm going to provide you with this PESTAR approach that will help you to raise the bar on project management maturity levels. Fundamentally, what is a schedule? Pardon me for going to so basic, but let's just set the foundation real quickly here. What is the schedule? The purpose of the schedule is to provide a roadmap through the project that provides signposts telling you how well you're doing. It's just that simple. But something that's that simple is usually very complex underneath. So keep in mind that we do projects not because we want to keep busy, but because we have deliverables. We want to provide something throughout and or at the end of the project. So we will be concentrating on deliverable-based project scheduling today. What's a good schedule? Well, a good schedule accurately models your project with a reasonable and consistent level of detail. Have anyone in the room seen project schedules that are too simple? Yes. Like too vague? Has anyone here seen a project schedule that's too complex? So that's part of the art. There's a lot of aspects to the art of project management. This is being one of them, which is the level of detail. And today, while I wish I could provide you with specifics, as we all know, each project has its own nature. The project schedule is a living document. We all know of colleagues of ours who have created a project schedule, presented it, got approval, put it in the drawer, and never looked at it again. We also know of folks who may micromanage. So there's a lot of talk and conversation behind those details, which I'm not going to get into for purposes of our conversation. But keep in mind that it's a living document, and it's important to provide it with care and feeding. So schedules that are good schedules will provide you with the information that you need to keep it on track, as well as to inform your team members and the executives. That brings us to PESTAR. PESTAR represents 6 areas of mentoring that we'll talk about: planning, estimating, scheduling, tracking, analyzing, and reporting. And truly, the introductory slide about pesto, when I first came around with this concept, the way I remembered the acronym was by thinking of the food pesto. And that was 15 years ago, and it served me very well. We're going to be talking today specifically about IT project scheduling, more in the waterfall approach. Certainly, there's agile methodology, which is incredibly valuable and valid approach, but again, that's not my focus today. My focus is going to be in the area of IT project scheduling. Quite frankly, my personal opinion is I think also IT project scheduling is a dying art. The apex of it was in Y2K, when the world was going to stop turning as of January 1st, 2000, and so leading up to that, project managers were very in tune with managing their project schedules. Absolutely, there are project schedules today that are healthy and actively being managed. But what my experience has been with customers in the private and public sector is that, generally speaking, the skill set of IT project scheduling is going down, and we're doing management of projects in different ways. Totally fine, but certain projects do fall in this area that we need to have the skill set. So why would we consider PESTAR? I think maybe the most important reason is because it's going to help raise the project manager maturity bar. There's nothing wrong with that. This could be a retraining of items that people already know in your organization. It's just fine-tuning and sharpening the knife. It's also going to resync our project management team on healthy project scheduling practices. You're going to see that this PESTAR approach is a very concentrated 6-week approach, which means that we get in, we do our mentoring, and we get out. And when I say we, it's you would be doing this with your organization. And we're doubling back to the fundamentals on scheduling execution. Why would management care about PESTAR? Consistent, repeatable, reliable reporting. That's every manager's dream. If they have a team of PMs who do things differently, then the reports that they get from each PM may have different results, and it's hard for them to reconcile. So one of the benefits of PESTAR is to come out of it with a team of PMs that are all locked and loaded in this similar approach. And we all know that if we give them good reporting, they'll go off and keep them busy for a while. The other benefit that management's going to have is they'll know that they're going to have a team that's trained or retrained on the fundamentals. Project managers, on the other hand, can take a look at themselves and say, hey, this is going to give me an opportunity to go to the next level in my skill set as a project manager. We all know that project managers are in high demand across the globe. So it's a skill set that you should be proud of, and that it's something that you should be always looking to improve yourself with. The tips and tricks that we're going to learn today are items that you can take away and add. Look, I go to presentations too, and what do they say? We all leave with 5%, 10% of what we just heard in the last couple of hours. So I'd be flattered and really joyful for each of you if you each took away at least just one thing from this presentation today that's going to help contribute. And these presentations will be made public, so you can always double back and capture those other items that you wanted to remember but forgot. The other thing that's really important is having a common language amongst your team. When we use the word remaining work, we want to make sure that everyone understands what that means. Or if we use the word estimate to complete, we want to understand. And we especially want to understand that remaining work is estimate to complete when we talk in terms of Microsoft project. So a common language is very valuable for teams to have. The honeycomb transition, isn't that cool? Careful, I was looking at when I was making it, it's like, that's so cool, I was getting dizzy at certain points. So a bit more of a perspective here. How does PESTAR relate to the CA-PMM and to PMBOK? For those of you who have studied the CA-PMM documents, you'll have, this diagram will be familiar to you. And really, again, as I was saying, the PESTAR methodology is going to touch these two stages, planning and executing. You can see it in yet another CA-PMM diagram. Again, it's going to touch planning and executing. And yet one more view. It's going to touch, please?
Planning and
executing. Excellent, excellent. All right. So how does it relate to PMBOK? PMBOK has 5 process groups, and really the skills we're going to be looking at today are touching on planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling. And when you download this presentation, here are the PMBOKs in words, and you're going to be able to pull out of these 3 red stages how the PESTAR will help fine-tune areas. Practically speaking, project managers are wickedly and wildly busy doing a lot of things. And there's many steps to accurately managing a project. This lists 24 common steps that a project manager is responsible for in its sequence. And I've put a box around those areas from item 6, which is define the work, down to item 20, which is to conduct the project review. This is where the PESTAR mentoring will touch on in all of these areas right here. So while it's very nuanced, and if you try to explain to your friends this weekend what this session is about, good luck, because it's so nuanced. But we all in this room have a good understanding that fine-tuning our skill set in this area would really be helpful. So, as I mentioned, PESTAR is an approach, and it's a 6-week approach, and the 6 weeks relate exactly to the letters: planning and estimating, scheduling and tracking, analyzing and reporting. In planning, you'll touch on defining deliverables, which most probably are already listed in the project charter, so you'll validate those. You'll design a deliverable-based work breakdown structure. You'll apply the dependencies to your tasks and activities, and then you'll assign roles and resources, named resources at that time if you know. In the estimating section, you'll add assignment estimate to complete, which Microsoft calls remaining work. You'll adjust durations as needed, and you will baseline. In scheduling, we're going to level the plan. We're going to see how all of the tasks and the dependencies and the resource availabilities work out to really find out what our plan is going to look like and when the anticipated deliverable date is. And out of that, of course, we're going to find the critical path. Tracking, we're going to track actual hours, actual costs, etc. We'll also take a look at percent complete and earned value as well. Analyzing, what are the variances? Schedule, scope, cost, risks.
These are all.
Can we mitigate any risks or issues?
Sorry.
And lastly, reporting. There's weekly reports, there's executive reports, there's a whole series of reports. So I'm going to show you here that when we go through each of those areas, for week 1, we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And we'll go to the desk of Project Manager 1 at 8 o'clock sharp, and we'll be with them for 2 hours, and we'll take them through the various components of planning. And then we'll progress on to the next project manager and the next one after that. So by 3 o'clock, you've touched 3 project managers on their projects, and you can hold office hours at the end of the day in case they have any questions. So when I say their projects, sometimes the project manager is just about to embark on creating a new work breakdown structure, while others are already in midstream. If a project manager is already in midstream, you can sit down and work with them and go back with them to when they did the planning and take a look at what they did and help fine-tune their plan to bring it up to speed. Then Tuesday, you touch project managers 4 through 6, and Wednesday 7 through 9, Thursday 10 through 12. Some organizations don't have this number of project managers. That's okay. I'm just giving you a format that you can use through the week. And then Friday, it's vacation day to recharge for the next week. So that's week 1 is planning. Then we come back and we work on their plans for estimating, and we work on their plans for scheduling the following week, etc. By the way, this looks like a lot to us right here, but really all we're doing is we're touching a project manager 2 hours a week. So think of it that, present it that way to your team, is that we're going to come to your desk for 2 hours each week and work on firming up your plans and your skill set. So what's the result? You could have up to 12 project managers either trained or retrained on the fundamentals of project schedule development, management, analysis, and reporting. You'll end up with 12 good project schedules. You might even, through the process, identify certain PPM processes that you have in your organization where you can fine-tune some of it. And maybe the most exciting thing for executives is that they're going to end up with some clean data. Any questions at this point? Okay, let's get a little liveliness here before I get into sections. You guys, you scream PES, and then you guys scream STAR, okay? On 3. PES,
Star.
PES, STAR, PES, STAR. All right, there you go. On the food theme, I am rather cheesy at times, but I have fun with it. Okay, so let's take a look at planning. Let's dive into planning. I enjoyed a couple of, for each of these sections, I pulled out some quotes. And the bottom right one kind of hit me. It says, the sooner you begin coding, the later you finish. Has anyone had that experience, being part of a team? Yeah. My actual experience with this had nothing to do with IT project management. It had to do with painting. I worked in college for one summer with a really good house painter, and he said to me, Mike, by the time you're painting, that's only 20% of the job. 80% of the job is the prep work, the sanding and the scraping and the cleaning and getting everything ready. So I've equated that lesson in my life to IT planning, which is the more planning you put in up front, the easier the rest of the work happens downstream. None of it is easy, but it's easier than it could be otherwise. So why do we do planning? Well, CA-PMM says that we do planning for 4 main reasons. We want to gather and finalize the project requirements. That was the deliverables I was talking about earlier. Identify the project risks and way to manage them. We want to produce the detailed project schedule, the project management plan, and the project designs to guide the project. And we want to obtain authorization to proceed. So CA-PMM is big on planning. PESTAR, you'll be mentoring your colleagues on various activities, defining the deliverables, or better said, maybe validating them that they're in the project charter, and you may want to refine that list as you learn more through the planning process. You're going to design a deliverable-based work breakdown structure. We'll talk about some tips on that in a moment. We'll apply dependencies. We'll talk some tips on there. You'll assign generic roles and possibly name resources if you know at that time. And you'll also want to make a decision, what's the size of this project? Is it going to be one large project, or is it so large that we may want to break it apart into different pieces and have them related either through inter-project dependencies or even from a master sub-project relationship? Many considerations in planning, and again, when you get this PowerPoint, you'll be able to print this list out. But to take you through it in sequence, we're going to build the task list. We would then, after have the tasks out, we're going to want to sketch out what the dependency chain would look like. After we have that in place, we can apply generic role assignments. We then could apply estimate to complete to each of the assignments. And we can fine-tune the duration. We're going to talk a moment about estimate to complete versus duration. You can then fine-tune the duration for the work activities. We can even then begin to think about cross-project dependencies, if there are any. We want to make sure we have an organizational calendar, a team member calendar, team member information, and are there any kinds of lags that we have to put into our plan for consideration? And then we can build the project schedule. So as I've mentioned a couple times now, we're looking to do deliverable-based work breakdown structures. We can reference the project charter. Some output deliverables are inputs for downstream. So, of course, there'll be dependencies there. We want to make sure for each deliverable that we have a owner and that we have a general time frame for when it's needed. One of the tips that I want to offer you here is when you build a deliverable-based work breakdown structure, you want to have all of your deliverables on the same work breakdown structure level. And for each deliverable, you're going to want to have a completion milestone, and that also can be at the same level. So here's an example where you've got the deliverables and the deliverable completion milestone at the same level of the work breakdown structure. What this does is then it gives you, for example, if you're using Microsoft Project, you can now filter your view to that level of the work breakdown structure, and all of the information is readily available for you, easily reportable. Dependencies. Dependencies are really cool because it helps to drive how your schedule lays out over time. But they're so cool that sometimes we may overdo it with dependencies, and in fact, this spider web is a nice example where it's beautiful here and it works for a spider web, but maybe not necessarily for your project. So sometimes if you get too many inter-project dependencies and too many internal ones, when you apply the scheduler kind of blows up and says, hey man, what are you trying to do here? So you want to, this is the art, you want to be as fine-tuned as you can. You want to make a simple dependency chain, one that's effective and not too complex. When I was researching this and putting these slides together, the next slide I really enjoyed because we're in the computer world, right? And Silicon Valley talks about Java, and so we have this culture of caffeine and coffee around us, right? It's just kind of the fun food with IT professionals. So the picture here I'm going to show you next was fascinating to me, that when we're in planning, I just want to tell you ahead of time before I show you this picture, we may not want to be on too much caffeine, okay? So here's the picture of a normal person doing some normal dependency chains. And then right here is the picture of the web when you're on caffeine. Wait, guys, come on. Do you see this? See how funky that is? I mean, a spider freaked out. Look at that, man. That's just gnarly. I mean, maybe there's other things we want to be on when we're doing dependencies. I'm just reporting the facts here about what happens, right? So I thought that this was kind of a fun slide. Okay, let's move on. What are some of the pitfalls to planning? Neglecting to plan. I was too busy to plan. We don't have to really talk very much about that one. That is a pitfall. Focusing on activities and doing the work rather than on making it a deliverable-based activity. Too much caffeine when you're planning?
Never.
Okay, there's some giggles. All right, that was in there for humor. And neglecting to consider resource availability. Okay, that's planning, and that's what you'll do in the area for your first week with your colleagues. Let's go to second week, estimating. The first 90% of a project takes 90% of the time, and the last 10% takes 90% of the time. I see smiles.
That's 180%.
Sorry?
That's
That's
the problem.
180%.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
That's exactly my point. All right.
Explain.
What are we going to do in this area? This section we're going to add assignment estimate to complete. We're going to adjust durations as needed, and we are going to baseline. So why are estimates so important? I've been around the world, and I have to tell you that if I were an executive, the one thing I would make sure every one of my team understood was how to go about properly estimating the project. It's so critical. If there's one thing you want to walk out the door, consider this as one of the items. There's a couple more that I'll give you to consider, but if there's one thing, consider this: estimate to complete. If you feel as though you can use retraining in this, or if you feel some of your colleagues could, really get together and read about estimate to complete and how to do it and how not to do it, because it drives resource allocations. It drives budgets. Right? How does it drive budget? How does an estimate to complete drive a budget? Please, anyone?
Gives you your first reasonableness of a budget. Gives you an estimated budget for the first part.
Okay. Estimate to complete is hours. And I have a rate. I'm certain dollars per hour. So if you're using me for 4 hours, that's 4 hours times my rate. And when you add all the team members up doing all the activities, there's your budget for your project. So right there, the estimate to complete is, you can think of it as the accelerator in your car. You got your foot on the accelerator. You're applying more estimate to complete or backing it off. And we know it's really important. So not only does estimate complete drive finish dates, or even certain key critical milestone dates, but it also drives the budget. Critical schedule dates, historical reference point for improving future estimates. Some of us are in the area of doing projects where we actually will repeat them either annually or semi-annually, or there may be folks in other agencies that may be doing a similar project. Wouldn't it be groovy, bitchin', and cool if you could give them a healthy plan saying, hey, this is what we did, these were estimates, these are actuals, you can see the variance. So now the next person who does that type of project can learn and improve the estimates there. I mean, we're always in the idea of doing continual improvement. Estimates to complete help you with that. And possibly most importantly, estimates to complete directly impact your reputation. Hey, Mike, when's it going to be done? It'll be done in a month from now. Okay, well, 3.5 weeks from now. How's it going, Mike? Well, I'm going to need a little bit more time. That's fine. Things change. But my point here is that if you want to really raise your maturity level as a project manager, get better at estimating, and your reputation as a project manager will also get a gold star next to it. So, guidelines. Who here has heard of this guideline of the 880 rule? 880 rule. A task, generally speaking, is a guideline. A task should not be less than 8 hours and not necessarily be more than 80 hours, or approximately 2 weeks. That's a guideline. Not true in all cases by any means, but it's a good rule of thumb. There's another one, a 1%, 10% rule. Certain types of projects that are duration-based are, this might apply to, where a task as a guideline shouldn't be less than 1% of the total duration of the project and no more than 10% of the total duration of the project. Or another way of looking at it is you want to have a task be no longer than 1 to 2 reporting cycles. Any thoughts on why that might be? How that guideline works in? 1 or 2 reporting cycles? Because, and this is where Agile comes into play, Agile is every week you're doing a stand-up and you're reviewing what's happening and what's going on, and are there hurdles and are there items that we need to knock down, any new risks that have popped up. So if you have your tasks within 1 or 2 reporting cycles, you'll be on top of things more than if you had a task that's a month long necessarily, and that goes outside of those couple of reporting cycles. There's many, many formal estimating approaches. If you Google this, you'll get this list and more, many. And of course, they're effective for all types of projects, not just IT. I thought that this planning poker methodology, it's a valid approach, is interesting. You know how sometimes when you're in a group, and you're with 3 or 4 people, and you go, gosh, how long do you think that's going to take? And one guy says, well, I think it's going to take about 3 weeks. And you start thinking, well, that could be reasonable. And then when they get around to you and they say, what do you think? You go, yeah, I think maybe 3 weeks is about right. Well, there's many smart psychologists out there that have done studies, and it might be that my agreement has been influenced by my partner who came up with that number. So planning poker is where you sit around a table with cups of coffee, not caffeine, and cups of water, I mean, not caffeine. And everyone has a full set of cards. And so when we talk about an activity, you shuffle through your card, you come up with your estimate, and you put it face down on the table. And when everyone has their cards face down on the table, then everyone reveals their number, and you can take a look at the estimate that way. And that way, you really truly are getting every individual's opinion. And then you can go around the table and support or refute why you came up with that number. What are some of the pitfalls to estimating? Inexperience in the business discipline of the project. So I'm a project manager, but I've never gone into the security world, and here I am managing a security project. Or it's a groundbreaking effort. It's never been done before. I continue to marvel and be relatively proud of the project managers behind getting the man to the moon and back alive. I mean, holy moly, we had never done anything like that before. How did they do that? It's just actually a fascinating thing. So it is possible. Have we, in our estimates, have we taken into consideration time for meetings and documentation and training? And certainly Murphy's Law and Cole's Law and all those other laws come up to play with a whole possible list of items that are unexpected that we didn't estimate for. So to wrap this up, contingency time. It's very important to consider contingency time. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. So how would we bake contingency time into your project? Well, 2 approaches could be. You could create a specific task, contingency task or tasks. Or you could take a look at a piece of work and you can bake into the estimates for that specific task some contingency time. So what are the pros and cons of both? Well, if we have a contingency task, that's great because you can easily identify it and show the organization that here's our plan and I've got some contingency in here, and we can even adjust the amount of contingency that we put in there. We include that task as part of the dependency chain, and so it becomes part of the, we make sure it's part of the critical path, and all's good. One of the cons about that, and I don't know about your projects, but in my projects, typically it's the contingency task, which is the first thing that gets either shrunk or taken out. Yeah. For all good reasons. Uncomfortable reasons to me, but all good reasons, right? So if you want to be a bit more subtle about it, you may want to bury your contingency time into the task However, there's pros and cons to that. So number one is, if we bury into the task, we know that, we've got it, but it's, and maybe you can think of it this way, the nice piece of it is that it's not transparent, so it won't easily be cut out of your project. However, at the end of the day, the downstream to it is bearing contingency time into each task or certain tasks. We know, as from earlier slides, that estimate to complete impacts budgets. So we are going to impact the budget and possibly artificially inflate the budget beyond what it needs to be. The project duration will end up longer. The value of this task for historical reference purposes may also go down, because if we don't properly manage our schedule going forward and we don't adjust the estimate to complete as we go through it, that contingency time we bake into the estimate complete will remain. And when I hand my project plan to someone else and say, oh, that task took 3 weeks, it really didn't take 3 weeks, it took 2 weeks. So I'm passing someone some faulty information. Do your plans have contingency tasks in there, or do you bake it in?
Bake it in.
You bake it in, okay? Are there any arguments? What are the, well, let me ask an open-ended question. What are the arguments for not having contingency task itself?
Management.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Someone said management.
Management?
You know, it openly identifies or gives them some wiggle room.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So the answer there was that management oftentimes will, as it says up here, see it and go, wait a minute, what are you talking about? A month worth of contingency time? Ooh, nah. All right. This is part of the art of project management, right? We are artistes. Bless you. Let me shift gears here, and let's talk about something that's very, very specific in project scheduling. Let's talk about Microsoft Project and how to use it when we're applying estimates. Firstly, let's get a nomenclature and understand that when you open up Microsoft Project, you're not going to see the word estimate to complete. You're not going to see the initials, ETC. You'll see remaining work. And that's cool. That's how it's called, and that's fine. It is. It's the amount of remaining work on that task. So that makes total sense. And by the way, Microsoft Project, I love it. I use it all the time. It's powerful. So I'm not here to bash it by any means. My suggestion here is how I have modified my views to make it more useful so that I can apply better project management techniques and not get myself tripped up. So, item number 2, this is another item that you may want to take away with you. The one item you take out the door, you may want to take this one and look at the PowerPoint for the other ones that you missed. So let's go into this. So notice how when this is a fresh out-of-the-box view, I hope you can see it in the back. But when you open up Microsoft Project for the very, very first time, and you go to the resource usage view, you'll see that it has a column for the resource name, and it has a column for work, and then it gives you another column in case you want to add more information to it. And then over here in this table, it's organized by work. All right, that's cool. So in Microsoft Project, work, this field right here, is actually the result of adding remaining work, estimate to complete, plus actual work. Okay. So the unsuspecting project manager, when they're going to say, oh, I need a report done, I'm going to put Mike on it, I think it's going to take about 40 hours, the unsuspecting project manager will open up their project plan, will type out the name of the task, and put Mike on it, and when they come to this view, they'll just type in the number 40. Okay, that makes sense. However, we're going to see in a moment how adding and updating estimate to complete in this field is actually going to cause you scheduling problems. So let's get more into that. Here's an example. So we know that work is equal to remaining work plus actuals. So when we populate the work with 40 hours, in that field, the work field, Microsoft, behind the scenes, will add 40 hours to the remaining work field, and of course we don't have any actuals yet on it, so everything's fine. 40 plus 0 is equal to 40. Now, some work's been done, and you status this task as 25% complete. Well, when you do that, Microsoft does the math in the background, and it will now add 10 hours of work, 25% of 40, to the actual work field, and it will automatically decrement remaining work down to 30. Again, this is all good because 10 plus 30 is equal to the 40 hours of work. And when we take a look at the Microsoft page, it still shows us 40 hours. However, the untrained, unsuspecting project manager doesn't realize that behind the scene, this 40 hours is represented of 30 and 10. So now what's going to happen is, in this use case, the team member calls up and says, hey, good news, I'm ahead of schedule, and I only have 20 hours remaining. So the project manager goes, hey, that's fantastic. Our customers will be really excited about this coming in earlier. So the PM does the math. I know you've done 10 hours, and we've got 20 hours remaining, so it's going to be 30 hours. We're going to deliver it 10 hours early. So they're going to go back to their screen, and they're going to type in to the work field 20 hours. Because isn't that where we typed in the 40 originally for the estimate to complete?
No, you would type in 30.
Pardon me?
You would have 30.
Well, because this unsuspecting PM, the question was why not type in 30? The question, because the PM is thinking, all right, I typed in 40 in that field, which was the original estimate to complete. Now I have a remaining estimate complete of 20 hours. I'll type in 20 right there. Mm-hmm. I promise you it happens all the time. So when we do that, there's an issue. Because we know that work is equal to remaining work plus actuals. So this is what ends up happening. They type in 20 hours into that work field, and Microsoft will hold the 10 hours constant that they've recorded for actuals, and Microsoft will naturally decrement remaining work down to 10 hours remaining, where the intention was for it to be 20 hours remaining. The result is the task now is going to be 10 hours less, and somewhere along the way, this mistake is going to rear its head. And if we've been doing this for a while in our project plan, then it's become cumulative throughout our project plan. So it's an innocent mistake, and it's easily resolved by doing one thing, which is on your view, keep the work field. That's very important. But I recommend to you to add the remaining work as a column and add actual work as a column. And then commit to yourself and mentor your colleagues that when you're updating estimate to complete in Microsoft Project, do so in the remaining work field. So now, going through that same use case, we type in 40 hours right here for Mike on task 1. Then when he does 10 hours, Microsoft will automatically calculate the 10 hours and decrement down the estimate to complete the remaining work down to 30 hours. And then when the team member calls and says, hey, good news, I only have 20 hours left, you type in the 20 hours, of course, in the remaining work field. And then everything is happy. And we can have a cup of coffee. Okay, cool? All right. One other note, and this is from a configuration standpoint. Each of us can go back to our desks and open up Microsoft Project and update our views. If you care to make it a standard view for your organization, you can do that as well. You can go to, well, there's all different ways of getting into that, but bottom line is there's a file in Microsoft Project that once someone updates it, you can share that file with other users and they will adopt those views, and then you can teach them how to reveal that view onto their desktop to make it their resource utilization view. So there's a way of standardizing this. What I'm trying to say is there's a way of standardizing these different views at a team level, and you can share them easily. Thoughts or questions? Good or bad?
Good.
Good. Good. We like good. Effort versus duration. This sometimes gets confusing for new PMs especially. So let me quiz everyone here. A task to create a report will take a full-time person, 8 hours a day, 40 hours to complete the work. How many business weekdays does this amount to? Who's got the answer? 5? Okay. How many weekdays will it take to complete this?
We do 6 hours per day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You do 6 hours? Fine.
No, I mean the person works 8,
Yeah.
but we say 6.
Ah,
Or
so
6.5, I use 6.5.
all right, so let's just for fun, just go for this, because I'm going to make a point. The comments here, if you didn't hear it, is that most organizations here are using either 6 hours or 6.5 hours allotted for project work. And the difference up to 8 hours is used for meetings and non-project activities. Excellent, that's great, right on. But for fun here, for this, let's imagine you got a contractor and they do full 8 hours worth of work every day, right? They don't have any life outside of project stuff. So doing that, how many days would this take? I heard 5, I heard possibly 6.
Well, is it consecutive business days? I mean, that 40 hours could be stretched out within a month.
That's the point. You get the gold star in this one. These 40 hours aren't necessarily consecutive, right? So I like that. So think of it this way. We've got 40 hours worth of work, and you give it to me, and I'm 8 hours a day. So if I were able to work on it consecutively, I could get it done between Monday and Friday. Great, 5 business days. But what if I'm going on vacation on Wednesday? So I do 2 days of work, Monday and Tuesday. I go on vacation, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm on vacation through Monday and Tuesday the next week, and then I finish my remaining work that other week. So in that example, the estimate was 40 hours, but it took 10 business days to complete it. So you're going to have tasks and activities that aren't necessarily done all consecutively, all up front. And if this task of creating this report isn't on our critical path, and I take vacation in the middle of this task, then, and I'm the only one who could do this task, I've just impacted the project's end date somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So effort, estimate to complete, and duration are somewhat related, but not directly tied. All right? Okay. There was a lot to do in week number 2 mentoring, wasn't there, with planning? So let's go into week number 3, scheduling. Mr. Rolex had it right when he said, dates in the calendar are closer than you think. You can con a sucker into committing to an impossible deadline, but you cannot con him into meeting it. All right. Scheduling defined. Scheduling, for this presentation purposes, is the art of calendaring the work effort such that it respects task dependencies and constraints, as well as project team members' availability. Let's not forget people drive the work. And an interesting point here is that Microsoft Project, when it was born in early 1990s, it was born under the philosophy that tasks and their relationship drive the project. There are other project scheduling tools out there where the philosophy is that people's availability drives the project schedule. If we all didn't walk through the front door of this building today, and then we wouldn't be here today to do this activity. So therefore, without the people, the activity doesn't get done. And philosophically, it's important to understand the scheduling tool that your team is using, because the scheduler engine applies a different algorithm. So it's important for you to get intimate with your project scheduler. Types of scheduling, there's manual scheduling, and there's also using a scheduling engine. Manual scheduling can be done on a napkin, all right? Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint, that's manually scheduling. We can go do manually scheduling in Microsoft Project, and it's totally effective and appropriate. for certain size projects. But when they start to get big, then probably using a scheduling engine is going to be a lot more efficient. And as we've spoken about in the planning area, schedulers care about, the scheduling engine cares about start dates, constraints, such as must start on, start no earlier than. That will impact your scheduler. The dependency chain, resource staffing levels, calendars, the remaining work, reported actuals. So there are many pitfalls to scheduling inaccurately. A few of them include the schedule is just way too complex, or there's too many tasks that you can't effectively manage it. The dependency chain is either not complete or it's too complex. You may forget to baseline at the beginning of your project. Why is baselining so important?
Tells you how the project is going.
It gives you a reference point to see where without baselines, how do you determine variance? So that's very important. And then one other side note here is, great, so we're just about ready to embark on a new project, and we click the baseline button, and now we have a baseline. Fantastic. Now we move forward 4 months, and we increase the scope of the project, and we want to re-baseline. So baselining, I didn't go into this in this presentation, but there's an art to baselining. If we were to click the project level baseline for the project at month 4, that's okay. We just included the new scope into the baseline, but what we just did also is we've now re-baselined our first 4 months worth of work to wherever it is today at the beginning of month 4, and that now is considered to be what the baseline is. But the problem with that is we've just lost the variances that we've been collecting over the first 4 months. So what you want to do when you baseline and you add new scope is you want to make sure you just baseline the new scope piece so that you retain your historical variance information. You neglect to update the schedule on a frequent and regular basis, and you may not understand the task types. Task types. Who here has heard of fixed work, fixed units, fixed duration? Yeah? It's really, really important. So now I'm going to get to item 3 that you can choose to be the one item you walk out this door with today to remember. So again, this is going to be a group activity. I want everyone to repeat after me. What up?
What up?
What up? That's right. What is what? Right? What is work is equal to units times duration.
That's cool.
Wait, I brought this for a reason. Work, class, is units times duration. This is a big one. Again, the unsuspecting, untrained project manager using Microsoft Project may not be aware of what it's doing with these task types. So let's talk about this for a moment. Just think of general algebra. General algebra says that if this is an equation, W is equal to U times D, and if we have U as fixed units, if we have a task and we mark it as a task type of fixed units, then if you increase duration, you increase work, or if you increase the work, you increase the duration. If you only have me, and you want me to paint that wall, and it's going to take me 8 hours, cool. Now you say, and I also want you to paint that wall, I just increased the work, we doubled the work, well then it's going to take me twice as long. Fixed work, one person, that's what units is. Units refers to the number of people. So one person, if you increase his work, it's going to take him longer. Okay, that's fine. And the word fixed, well, Microsoft tells me it's fixed units. But what we're going to see here right now is Microsoft uses the word fixed in a very sophisticated way. It's really cool the way it does it, but we just need to be trained on this. So even though Microsoft says it's fixed units, or I've marked a task as fixed duration, Microsoft still allows me to type into the fixed duration field and override that fixed duration. Let me explain further to you. So let's say in this case we have fixed durations. That would be red, right? That duration is 1 week. We know by algebra if that's fixed and I change the number of people on it, then the amount of work is also going to change. We know that. But then you start to go, wait a minute, if Microsoft allows me to overwrite a fixed value, so if this is fixed duration and I type a new value into fixed duration, which of these other two values are going to change? Are you getting what I'm trying to say here? If the task type is fixed duration and I change duration, then Microsoft is going to recalculate the work value. If it's fixed units and I type into and add more people to that task and I change the units, Microsoft is going to change the duration. Lastly, if it's fixed work and I type in and override the work number, Microsoft is going to recalculate the duration. Let me tell you, each one of us has experienced this if you've been using Microsoft Project at some point. And you're not crazy. And now that you understand what up, you now have a framework that you can study. So my experience was, before I learned this, it's fixed duration, and I changed duration, and then work changed, but I didn't want work change. So I'd go over, and then I would change the work value, and if I change the work value and it's fixed duration, what changes? Units. But wait a minute, I don't want units to change, so then I go into the units and change the units, and if you change the units on a fixed duration, then the work changes. You guys ever gone into this death spiral?
Yes.
Yep.
We all have. It's okay to admit it. It's like, hi, I'm Mike, and I use Microsoft Project. It's challenging. But what's really nifty is that WUD gives you now a better understanding behind the scene. And it's important for your organization, your team, to talk about what might be your default task type that you want to use. Because each task type has a different way of using Microsoft Project when you want to make certain adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
So start with a given task type. Make sure everyone understands that if you need to add someone, here's how you do it in Microsoft Project. If you want to change work, here's how you would do it in Microsoft Project. And that way you have a baseline, and from that baseline, you now can get more sophisticated and start using other task types as well. Okay? Yes, ma'am?
This is going to be so obvious, but are we going to take like a 2 minutes break to go to the restroom?
You know, one for all and all for one, we are going to take a 2-minute break right now, okay? Thank you very much. We'll see you in, I am going to start sharply though in 5 minutes.